If I start the machine, we're here today at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center, and my name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated, doing the interview, and the person that I'm interviewing is Tom Corey. Should I have the other? Let's see. Tom was in the Army, was in the 1st Air Cavalry Division. Highest rank was E5. Tom, what were your service dates?
December 7th, 1966.
To?
May, I don't know the date, 1968.
Okay, that's fine. May, gotcha, fine. And did you serve in any wars? Vietnam. Okay, and where did you serve?
I served with the 1st Air Cav Division, mostly Central Highlands, and in
Central Highlands?
Central Highlands.
Okay, what were you doing before you went into service?
I was a auto mechanic, and I was going into air conditioning.
That's what you were doing in Michigan?
Correct.
Okay. I'm trying to get a little balance here going. A little balance. Bingo. All right. Good. That's good. Did you had graduated school, I take it?
I did.
So, were you drafted or were you enlisted?
Drafted.
Okay. And where did you go first to process in?
Downtown Detroit.
All right. I guess after you got through all of the paperwork and the physical and the whole 9 yards, where did you go after that?
Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training.
Basic training. How long were you there?
6 or 8 weeks, and whatever basic.
Okay, 6 or 8 weeks. Make sure that this is in focus. That's good,
I don't even remember how long basic was.
Huh? What was basic like? I got you.
Oh, it was different. It was good, in the sense that we were learning things that we had no clue of before. The majority of us were involved with weapons and other things that we were being trained to handle. And, the discipline and other things that we did not have in civilian life. But basic was okay, got through that. Then went off to advanced infantry training at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And did that for 8 weeks or more. And that mostly trained us to what we were going to be doing in Vietnam as combat infantry was the training that I had. And did that, made it through it, got orders to go to Vietnam. And while I was on leave before I went to Vietnam, when we went home, we had it all arranged. I got married to my fiancée and had our honeymoon and everything, and then I got on one of them big jets and took off for Vietnam.
And how long were you in Vietnam?
Landed in Vietnam in May of 1967 and served in combat in the field. When I arrived in Vietnam, I was assigned to the 1st Cav.
Excuse me, please, sir. I'm videotaping him. I apologize. I apologize.
got assigned to the 1st Air Cav Division. Got my company, platoon. We served most of our tour, like I said, in the Central Highlands. And we stayed in the field the whole time we were there, except once we had to come back to regroup because we were in a major battle and lost too many people, and we had to go back and again put some new people in place where we lost a number of soldiers in the battle. That happened twice, and went back once to catch a flight to go to another place in Vietnam to help the 4th Infantry that was in some trouble. While I was there, they were being taken over the guns, our guns, the 4th Infantry guns. And as we were going in to help those that help our guys, I ran into my brother-in-law, and I ran past him and just looked at him and said, "Hey, Bob," and kept moving into our position to take the guns back.
Right.
And that was, he wouldn't have been there much longer if we wouldn't have gotten there, because they didn't have anybody else there for support yet. So we were,
Wow.
so that was an interesting event. Later in that year, one of the major battles that we were in, I lost some good friends in it that had been with me since the start. This was in December. It was a 3-day battle. It was not. It was a little bit of a turning point, but not because I've seen so many others that we lost. It didn't. You had to stick with what your mission was, and you couldn't focus on the death of someone because you didn't have time. You maybe had a half hour, and you had to move out again. So it was kind of difficult doing that, losing people and then not being able to do anything other than put them in a body bag and send them to the rear. So that was kind of tough. Then we were going into, we had moved up to just below the DMZ in January. We left Don Kerry, our base, 1st Cat base, and moved up in that area. January 31st, we got called up to go on we're out in the field, and they told us to saddle up. We were going out to take a village that was taken over controlled by the enemy forces. And I had some real bad feelings about it. I told some guys in my squad, and some other guys that had been with me since I'd been there. And so anyways, they said, "Don't worry, we'll be all right. Everything will be all right." They flew us in choppers, and they dropped us. We were receiving fire as we went in. I took my squad and got in position. Waited for it. We had some airstrikes and artillery strike runs come in. After that was over, I was getting prepared to see which way we were going in, so I took my weapon and I went over the dike that we were behind to look to see where everybody else was and what was in front of me and where we were going. I barely had my head up at first, and then I saw that we could see where we were going in. I was looking and I saw a flash, muzzle flash from the village, and I went out immediately after I got hit. and the round went in my neck and hit my main artery, jugular vein, came back past my spinal, hit my spinal cord, came out the back of my shoulder, so I was paralyzed, plus I was bleeding to death, according to some of the guys that were there trying to stop the bleeding and save me. They were able to do it, and whatever else they did, saved me, and along with God, letting me live, because they said when they put me in the chopper, these guys years after I found the guys that did it, and at a first Cav reunion in Washington, and they were talking, they all started crying when they saw me because they thought I was dead. I died that day.
Right.
And they were talking about loading me on the chopper and said that I was done. And they again thought that was my last day. The doctors that worked on me in the hospital in Vietnam, one of them's from this area, worked down the street at JFK Hospital, and I was in there in the early 70s when I moved here, and I had gotten sick, and I went into JFK Medical Center. And I was on the unit, and one of the doctors that was on the unit was going through things and saw the name, and my wife was there, and he asked her if I was injured in Vietnam. She goes, yes. And he said, I heard he was one of my patients. He came and started talking to me, looked at me and said, I can't believe you're still alive.
Yeah.
He said, when we got finished with you on the table, we did all we could for you. And I had never thought you would still be alive.
Really?
Because we thought you weren't going to make it after we closed you up and everything. But anyways, again, God let me live, so I'm here.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, let's just go back for a minute. Obviously, do you remember any of your instructors from basic training or anything?
No, I just remember I got in fights with a couple of them.
You said you weren't a prisoner of war.
No.
Good for you. All right. Did you keep a diary?
No.
All right. Okay. Let's see. While you were in the service the entire time, how did you stay in touch with your family?
In Vietnam or?
Throughout.
Oh, I was in basic and AT whenever we got to use the phones.
Right.
When they allowed us to use phones, we didn't have cell phones back then.
Okay,
When
well.
they let us use the phones, I would call home, talk to my wife, and then talk to my parents.
Okay.
Same with advanced infantry training, stay in touch that way. We'd write letters when we had time.
Right.
I did the same in Vietnam. Never got to call, but I wrote letters. Letters almost every day. And, took photos and unfortunately sent them the wrong way because none of them never made it home. Any of the rolls of film that I taken never made it. I got one roll that did make it.
Oh.
I have some pictures, but
Okay.
so that was it. And then on my R&R, I went to Hawaii, met my wife there.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you, where else did you travel?
That was my R&R, is Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
Then having that fun there and being there with her, and then having to say, I'm going to go back to Vietnam.
Okay.
While you go back to the States, that was very difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
Having to psych yourself up to go back into what you just came out of, which was pretty much the saddest thing you can think of is war, because of the loss of not only our people, but the people on the other side, the civilians,
Right?
the kids, the moms, the dads that get killed because they're in the way or on the wrong side for whatever reason. They don't even know why.
Vietnamese.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the North Vietnamese soldiers would rather be at home with their families than having to come down and fight us. But I was talking to them after the war, knowing they had the same feelings we did.
You visited with them?
I did.
How'd you do that?
I've been back to Vietnam 15 times.
Wow.
At least 15. That's for the number. With the Vietnam Veterans of America, I went back as...
That's the organization you belong to, right?
One of them.
Okay.
Correct. And I went back there with our program called the Veterans Initiative, which was, we worked trying to get information from Americans, hoping to taking that stuff that we're taking off bodies of enemy soldiers that would help us to
Sorry.
get our former enemy to, by bringing back information on their soldiers that would help them. We were thinking that if we brought information to them, they would give us information on missing Americans.
Right.
And the first trip was pretty intense. It was the first time a large group of American soldiers went back and sat across the table of our former enemy and talked about why we're there. They wanted to talk about the war and the atrocities, and I spoke up and said, we're not here for that. We didn't come here to talk about that. We can't change what happened on either side. You guys did it, we did it, we know that. And I had the support of the rest of our former enemy that said we're not here to discuss that either, because neither one of us had a choice of serving. We did what we had to do.
Right.
Things happened during war that are unfortunate. Things are done to people, they're tortured, they're killed to find out information. It was something that everybody else in the room agreed that we're not going to talk about it. We're going to talk about helping the families that are still trying to find what happened to their loved ones.
Right.
Information off of them, and it was stuff that we brought back. It was photos, it was diaries that the enemy soldier, that Americans took off their bodies. We had maps of where there was mass grave sites, which turned out to show mass grave sites. We went to the site with our former enemy and uncovered the remains of hundreds of soldiers who were buried in those graves. And we found many more grave sites that resulted in remains of North Vietnamese soldiers. And by returning and doing what we said we would do, we won the North Vietnamese over. That, to the extent that they welcomed us to their homes, they couldn't wait for us to return on trips to meet with us and just talk with us. And they talked about, where did you serve, and what'd you guys do, and they told us what they did, and it was, they had PTSD too, but they wouldn't admit it because they weren't allowed to.
Wow.
But we sat in meetings, and then I did one meeting where we had a session like we do here, group sessions with the guys. We had them in the room with us, and we were dispersed properly, and we were one next to each other, And then we talked about the war and things about the war, things that bothered us about the war. And we all felt the same. When it came down to the end of the meeting, it was, they weren't any different than us.
Mm-hmm.
They were soldiers that were told by their government that what they were going to do. And theirs was a little bit different because they were defending their country.
Mm-hmm.
And we were over there as an occupying force that was trying to take the country away from them and give it to the South Vietnamese, but they felt different. They thought it was their country. And then we talked about politics, and we know politics on both sides is crap. The politics that got us into that war, and
Okay.
wars since then that are just, we pray to God there's no more wars. Does not resolve anything except death, destruction, and the results are always the same. Nobody won anything. It's as we look at the wars, we're just finishing up. And what happened in Iraq, is everything all better now? No. And it's going to get worse. And we did, again, what we were asked to do. The soldiers and Marines and Airmen and Navy all did our jobs. And sitting there in a VA medical center and seeing all the people coming through this medical center with wounds of war, visible and invisible wounds that will never, some can never be repaired. And with the wounds coming back today with traumatic brain injury, guys that are just totally out of, they're saving more people because of all the things they learned from Vietnam and other wars on what to do in combat situations when people are injured and how to get to them quicker, and better equipment, better helmets and stuff. But those that are surviving will never be able to do anything for themselves. It's going to have to be their parents taking care of them and caregivers. So, war sucks. I don't have anything else to say about war except this. I met some nice people during the war and after the war. But there's other ways, and we were able to go over and talk things over with our former enemy and see how we would do it. But unfortunately, other people don't like to talk. But there's situations where talking to some people, like today in Iran, it might not be us doing the talking, but another country could do the talking to stop and prevent things from happening. But for some reason, we don't take that route. It's usually let's just take them on. Anyway.
Okay. I've heard enough about K rations. All the other food that you had in the service besides the K rations, how was the food?
The food through basic and AIT was okay.
Okay.
It was edible.
And how about in Hawaii and Vietnam?
It was good. The stuff you got that was not something out of a can.
Right.
Or something that was out of a restaurant, and if you knew what you were ordering, because they cook a lot of animals that we wouldn't eat.
Okay.
And so you tried to eat something that didn't look like that or couldn't be that.
Okay. How did you get along with your peers, your fellow peers, and your officers?
Mostly good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There was a couple of times that we butted heads.
Right.
With officers in Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
And drill sergeants and basic and AIT.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
because I didn't agree with what they thought I should be doing.
Right. Okay. So I guess after you got hit, you were discharged.
It was about 5 months later they medically discharged me.
Okay. And where were you at?
At the time, I was at the Memphis VA hospital, spinal cord unit.
In Tennessee. Okay. All right. And what did you do when you got out of the service?
Picked out a wheelchair. Did nothing because of my disability. I had too many problems, and I was in and out of the hospital for the first few years. Back and get sick and in and out. So I didn't think about a job
Right.
because there was no place I could work at the time anyways, because no place was accessible. Everything had steps going into it and doors weren't wide enough. Bathrooms weren't accessible. So back then, people in wheelchairs didn't get around too good. It wasn't until later in the 70s when they started doing accessibility on buildings. So,
Right.
because I couldn't go out to eat hardly ever because it wasn't a restaurant. If I did get in a restaurant, I'd go through the kitchen to get into the restaurant. And so it was kind of difficult. And when I moved to Florida, I was using the Miami VA spinal cord unit
Right.
and got involved with some guys down there this was in the mid-70s that were with the Paralyzed Veterans of America.
Right.
So I got involved with PVA, the chapter in Florida, and got involved with the chapter, served as a chapter president, went to PVA conventions, didn't take on any leadership roles because then I was starting a Vietnam Veterans of America chapter here in Palm Beach County and got active with that in PVA at the national level and started serving on the national board in '85 and national secretary for 10 years, national vice president for 4 years, national president for 4 years. And when I finished that, I came back here and I started working here at the West Palm Beach VA Hospital, and I've been here 6 years. So
In what capacity?
I work for the director, and I do training with staff. I do patient advocate work
Right.
and other things that we find that need to be addressed.
Have you used your GI Bill for anything at all?
No,
No?
I tried school, but I couldn't. I kept getting sick, and so I kept having to drop out. So I thought it was a signal, don't try it. So I didn't go back to school. I needed too many things. Someone to help me do things would have to do during school, and it was complicated. So it was just another thing because of my injuries that I didn't follow through with.
Right. Okay. 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 Well, anyway. So you were married. You got married while you were in the service, and I met your wife. She's a lovely, lovely lady.
No, that was my first one.
Oh, okay. All right.
Then there was a second one.
Okay. Okay.
Now I'm looking at a possible third.
Really?
Well, I'm engaged right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Went over my head.
You're somebody else's wife
Oh.
that was with me.
Okay.
I don't know who it was that you're talking about.
Oh, okay. I just took it for granted the lady was your wife. That just I didn't know. I didn't even ask. Gotcha. All right. All right. Well, is there anything you already answered the back end questions about how did you feel about war in general, basically. How did the military overall influence your life, though?
It was good. I might have stayed in if I wasn't injured. I was thinking about staying because I thought that if I could come back and be an instructor, that I could help those coming over, you know, through the lessons learned.
Right.
Things I learned that I didn't find, that they didn't teach me in basic RAIT, that I would certainly put into a program if I was allowed to be an instructor.
Right.
When I came back.
Okay, well, is there anything you feel like we left out?
Something I'll think of after I leave.
Everybody does that.
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, well, at any rate, I want to thank you for the interview, wonderful interview, and I want to thank you for your service. Okay,
You're welcome.
thank you very much. What else?
On the trips that I made back to Vietnam,
Right,
the number of trips they were brutal. It was a lot of bouncing around, trying to lift me in and out of vehicles in Vietnam, and just the heat was worse than it was when we were there
really?
in combat. I was just going to 3 to 4 meetings a day with our former enemy.
Grueling.
At every level, the national vice president of the country, to every high-level official at every department in North Vietnam met with us to discuss what we were doing there. And they all, though they approved of us, they waived many things when we went into the country that we didn't have to do because we were there on a humanitarian mission that they held in the highest regard.
Right,
Not only looking for missing Americans and missing Vietnamese soldiers, we were working on the Agent Orange issue and met with their people that, their Agent Orange doctors that were working and studying the Agent Orange effects on their people. We knew what it did to our people, but they had people that lived in it, in puddles of it, in their water, and the disabilities that came out from the children that were in those areas. We visited and saw the results and continue to this day working on the Agent Orange issue. A lot of it was a result of things we found while our returns to Vietnam and the destruction of lives from exposure to Agent Orange. So that was another big issue with the Vietnamese and with us on trying to resolve things that were a result of the war. Again, we had great cooperation from the Vietnamese. We were able to do stuff our government could not do.
right,
Because they did not want to deal with our government, because our government didn't come through with things they promised the Vietnamese they would do. So the Vietnamese worked with us and again gave us confidential documents on prisoners that our government was never able to recover. And they let us into their archives to look at things. So it was a good thing that happened. And that was the only reason I kept going back, because the Vietnamese, I could get away with saying and doing anything with the Vietnamese. And pretty much got away with everything. Somebody else would try it and they wouldn't let them do it. And they respected me because they knew I was injured there. They felt some guilt for that. But they had respect for me and let us do things that again, they would not let anybody else do in that country.
Right.
So that was pretty neat to be able to be involved in.
Unique. Yeah.
And I'll think of some more things later.
Okay.
Later.
All right. We good, or you want to go on? Or
I got a meeting.
You got a meeting too. All right. I've got to get back to school. Thank you very much again for your service and the interview.